Air pressure is important for weather forecasting, but it's also important every time I step onto an airplane. Airplanes only fly because of air pressure. Old planes and small planes and helicopters still have barometric altimeters. That means they have a barometer that measures how far off the ground they are, but they have to keep adjusting it, and they have to keep contact with the people on the ground taking barometric readings to make sure that their altimeter matches what they're measuring on the ground. They set the elevation to a specific pressure, and then as you rise and the pressure drops, your altitude changes. Again, in a perfect world, all over the world, when you got to a certain pressure, you would be at a specific height. But we all know that's not the case. And it's very bad if you're going to be a pilot and assume that. Because as you fly into different temperature air, your pressure surface is going to curve. The pressure doesn't stay constant. Any kind of temperature change is going to change the pressure. Because of that relationship, pressure is related to the density or relative humidity of the air times the temperature. So if you're a pilot and you set your altimeter to 700 millibars, your altimeter the whole time would indicate that you're flying at 10,000 feet. However, when you're in cold air, you would actually be lower than 10,000 feet. And in warm air, you would be above 10,000 feet. But you would be thinking as a pilot, you're at 10,000 feet. Flying low to high, not that big a deal. Fly high to low, look out below. Let's say that pilot on the right in the high pressure area sets their altimeter at 996 millibars. The altimeter is going to read 500 feet. If they don't keep adjusting their altimeter to the pressure on the ground as they fly into low pressure or they fly into cold air, as they stay on that equal pressure surface, they're eventually going to crash, even though their altimeter the whole time would say 500 feet. Now, Drew Anderson went out to Smoketown Airport to talk to a pilot to see how they use this while they're flying around the area.
We're at Smoketown Helicopters. They do lessons and they do flight scene tours. It's in Lancaster County. I grabbed Garrett, the owner, because I wanted to ask him a little bit more about altimeter. We've talked about altimeter in class. The altimeter itself, I'll show you on the display. Here it is, and it uses pressure to tell you what height you're at. But there's a catch. There's a catch with cold versus warm. So first and foremost, Garrett, can you just tell us a little bit how the altimeter works itself?
Sure. So yeah, what the altimeter does is it senses the outside pressure and gives you a readout it's called MSO altitude or mean sea level. So it gives you a readout of how high you are above sea level. So right now we're at 370 feet, and that's what this airport is, 370 feet above sea level. Mm-hmm. So we can adjust this for the current pressure with what's called our Colson window. So we put the barometric pressure in to this Colson window. Today, just by coincidence, it's at 2992, which happens to be standard pressure.
Yeah, because we're changing systems. We're going from lower pressure to higher pressure. Literally, this morning it was cloudy, so we have dry air. There we go. Dry air coming in that way. It's tough to get. There we go. I had to get the lighting set. And then you can tell that it's still overcast over here this way when we get some lighting. The camera's having trouble getting lighting, but you get the picture. So we're kind of right in between. So you calibrate it to whatever the airport pressure is on that altimeter. And so that's using what? Well, how is it detecting the pressure in there? Like when you go up, how does it know you're higher up?
So what it has is a sealed calibrated wafer inside the altimeter, and that's manufactured from the actual gauge company itself. This one is adjustable, so actually when I pulled it out of the hangar this morning, it was showing somewhere around 500 feet. So I had to reset that down to a lower pressure on here so that it would show 370 feet. So what it's doing to detect as you go up, you get into less dense air, and there's wafers in there that have that sealed calibrated air pressure in them will actually start to expand when compared to the less dense air up at altitude.
And that's just because there's less air pushing on the balloon, if you will, that wafer that's in there, so it can expand. Now down here at the ground, we're at the bottom of a sea of air, so it's going to push on that balloon or that wafer more, and it's going to tighten it up. So that's how it can tell, okay, you're closer to the ground, there's higher air pressure. Exactly. Now the catch is, well, sure, we know there's less air when you go up and there's more air when you come down, but you got to remember hot and cold. So what happens if you're flying from Florida up to here?
Right, so the saying in pilots goes is from hot to cold, look at the low, or high to low, look out below. And what that means is if you're flying from one air mass to the other, whether it be temperature or pressure, usually they go hand in hand, you need to reset that altimeter to the current pressure as you go along. Otherwise, it could be, for example, when I could land, if I took off out of Florida and came back here, it might tell me I'm 1,000 feet above the ground when really I'm only 100 feet above the ground. That can be a dangerous situation for as far as pilots go. So you have to make sure that you keep up with the current pressure conditions and reset that altimeter accordingly.
Yeah, and the reason for that is warm air expands, cold air contracts. So if you're flying at the same pressure, literally the same pressure would be higher up down in Florida, and then here, where it's colder, it'll be lower to the ground. So that's what he was talking about there. He'd leave a Florida at one pressure setting. In Florida, hey, that warm air expands. He's flying here. Well, when he gets here, since it's colder, that pressure is closer to the ground. That's why that 1,000 feet can actually be more like 100 feet. Pretty interesting how actually pressure is used to detect height. And what do most actually regular airplanes use? Granted, if you're flying cross country, you have to calibrate it, so you're not going to have that issue. Some of the major airlines are using what to detect the ground?
Well, they actually still have a pedostatic system. That's what that's called in there. Well, they'll have the three instruments for the pedostatic system, or your airspeed indicator, the altimeter, and then the VSI. Now they also have more up-to-date equipment with they'll actually have a radar altimeter. That's an actual physical radar beam that goes to the ground and will tell you exactly the height you are, AGL. So like I said, our altimeter gives us MSL, mean sea level altitude, telling us how high we are above sea level, but you actually have to do the math to figure out how high you are above the ground. So a bit of outdated technology, but it still works and it's used today.
It's good those pilots know a little bit about air pressure. If you want to be a pilot, you have to take meteorology classes. It's also comforting to know that modern airplanes use radar to judge how far the ground is below the plane, much like they have on boats nowadays to see what's down at the bottom of the water. And they also have GPS satellites to help them out. Now, the reason why an airplane stays aloft is due to two factors, one called angle of attack and the other has to do with the Bernoulli effect. And Bernoulli basically discovered that faster moving air has less pressure than slower moving air. So I have a demonstration where I can show you that using this thick Merck Index, 13th edition. It's a rather thick book, and I once had a professor that took two big books like this and then put a piece of paper between them and said, for 20 bucks, who can blow this piece of paper off the book? And of course we had lots of volunteers, and most of them took a straw like this because you weren't allowed to actually touch the book. And they tried to blow between the books like this. You can't do it. No matter how hard you try, you can't do it. Because as you're blowing between the books, you're creating faster air in here. Fast air means low pressure, and nature hates unequal pressures. We have high pressure on the top, low pressure between the books. So the high pressure is actually holding this paper on the book. Well, you can do another experiment that involves two balls just like this. Now, I've seen this demo before with bowling balls, coffee cans. I have super balls here, but it'll still work the same. Got a tiny straw. I'm going to blow right between the balls. I'm going to ask you, what do you think is going to happen? Most people think it's going to blow the balls apart. But remember the Bernoulli effect. Faster air creates low pressure. There'll be low pressure sitting here between these two balls, high pressure on the outside. So the high pressure should push them together. There you go, Bernoulli effect. So here's how it works on airplanes. Most airplanes have a curved wing on top, like this. Imagine two ants. One ant was going to race the other ant. One ant will run on top, one ant will run on the bottom. Well, which ant has to run faster to get to the other side at the same time? The one that runs on the longer path, which is on top of the wing, is going to have to run faster. That's exactly what the air does. As the air blows over the wing, it has to move faster over top of the wing than it does underneath the wing. Faster air is on top, slower air is on bottom. Bernoulli says faster air produces less pressure. Slower air has higher pressure. Nature hates unequal pressure. And so it's going to equalize from high to low. And that is going to lift your airplane wing and then lift your airplane into the air. You know, back in the late 90s, I worked for NASA at Goddard Space Flight Center. And while I was there, I was able to look through some old newsreels, which were the way that you could go into the theater back in the 30s and 20s and figure out news stories and learn about what was going on in the world around you. So I'm going to show you a couple old newsreels from the beginning era of flight. And you'll see how some of these were successful, because they have the curved wing on top, and some not so much. The first one is the Flying Barrel, the New Sky Marvel.
Don't laugh. This thing that looks as if half of it was missing really works. It's a new tubular plane invented by an Italian engineer who believes this design will someday break all records for speed and stability. You've often seen a barrel roll, but here's one that flies.
So we do kind of fly around in those things today. Your modern jets are based on taking in air around the fuselage and look kind of like the barrel. Let's take a look at another old newsreel.
Here's the airplane of the future, according to its inventor, Dr. Snyder. He calls it the flying wing, and experts think it's going to revolutionize aviation. It's supposed to be foolproof and has lots of speed and pep, as the doc's going to show you right now. Here she goes. Looks as if the inventor copied his idea from a butterfly. Being all wing turns it into a glider in case the motor gets heebie-jeebies and makes tail spins impossible, Dr. Snyder claims. It can top 100 miles an hour and is supposed to be as safe as old Dobbin for the family. If what the doc says comes true, we'll all be hopping around in these pancakes very soon.
Well, are we hopping around in those pancakes really soon? I had a curved top, which allowed fast air to flow over top. That provides lift underneath, and yeah, we do fly around in those things. Stealth fighters are simply a more up-to-date version of the flying wing. Here's another newsreel about one that might not work so well.
More convincing proof of the amazing and rapid progress of aviation you wouldn't want, I'm sure, than this demonstration at Baltimore today. J. Carl Bauer and Louis Huber went to work in their spare time to construct this poor man's dream, a plane propelled by bicycle pedals. It's a momentous occasion. All aviation stops to watch. Did someone say they laughed at the Wright brothers? Well, this pair will try again, too. Maybe make a bicycle out of airplane parts.
There they have the faster air going under the wing, low pressure under the wing, high pressure is going to push it back down. You know, the Wright brothers were people who built bicycles, and they built their airplane out of bicycle parts. Here's another newsreel.
Folks, here I am with a new device called the ornithopter. This device, I expect to attain flight in the air. Through a system of leverage advantage, plus a man's physical power, I believe it's possible to fly as a bird. And here I am, you can look this device over. It appears heavy, it's light.
Well, that sounds okay if it works. But if Bertie doesn't fly, when he makes that jump, he's going to get a real cold bath. Here he goes. Flasho. Well, he got the bath all right, but is little Willard discouraged? Not a bit. Just wait a moment and you'll see. Now his feathers are all dry again, and he's had a good dinner of canary seed, so maybe this time he'll really do it. He's going to soar gracefully off the rock, so he says. Keep your eye on the birdie. Cuckoo, cuckoo.
His wing was curved on the top, but he couldn't just get enough forward speed in order to provide that lift. Couldn't run fast enough.
Here you see another type helicopter or direct lift air machine. Our principle, as you will see, is a flat plate or disc type propeller moving the air fast enough to produce a lift. Our engine is connected to our transmission by a jack shaft driven by a chain. Our transmission rotates and reciprocates our propeller. As the propeller goes up, we get our lifting power on the down reciprocation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll show you how this works.
No.
Jack Cohen, the pump chap there, is a butcher by trade, but in his spare moments he's a student of aerodynamics. And right now he's demonstrating in a small way the principle of a new rocket device he's working on. Something must have gone haywire. But here's the real thing, Jack's bicycle rocket glider. And he's all set for a tryout here at the Metropolitan Airport. If it'll just work as he hopes, he'll be famous tomorrow. Then goodbye loin chops and rump steaks. The dog collar he's putting on is an ingenious arrangement which will enable him to aid the flight of his craft by a gentle flapping of the wings. So. With a little help from everything but gravity, Cohen gets his remarkable flying machine underway at terrific speed. That is, it'll get up speed if the assistant rocket engineer will only hurry up and put a match to the power plant. Oh, there goes another dream up in smoke. The idea wasn't so hot, but Cohen's burning out. What he should have next time is a pair of asbestos pants.
So the dog collar was keeping him attached to, well, it's not really aerodynamics. Let's review what we learned in this lesson. Airplanes fly because faster air over the curved part of a wing causes big changes in air pressure, which lifts the plane. That's known as the Bernoulli effect. Surface maps show where high and low pressure is. They show what the pressure would be at sea level. Sea level pressure is the pressure at 0 feet. Upper air maps are made on a constant pressure surface. The height that pressure is found at is then labeled on an upper air map. And upper air maps show meteorologists two things: where the warm air is under high heights and where the jet stream is, which is blowing along those lines. So now we've gone over the physical properties of temperature of the air, humidity of the air, and pressure of the air. And now we can start to look at how we forecast short periods of time or long periods of time, known as the climate.